Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Now, I'd like to talk about a very important topic, and that is creating coherence in a passage or a paragraph. Now, if we recall, two very important concepts are unity of a passage of paragraph. Let's just call this paragraph. That means there's a theme and all of the statements support that one theme in that paragraph. Now, coherence, on the other hand, is a logical flow of thoughts from one sentence to another. There is a nice logical flow of thought, and there's a smooth transitions. Okay. So those are the two aspects of making a paragraph coherent. That is, it's so important. Let's just make it neater. That there has to be a logical flow of thoughts. Okay, logical flow of thoughts. Okay, and there has to be smooth transitions. Smooth transitions. Okay, so from one sentence to another sentence. Now here we're talking about sentences within a paragraph. So here's a paragraph, and here's the first sentence, and then here begins the second sentence, goes all the way up to here, and this. So now we talk about smooth flow between sentences, from that one to that one, that one to that one, that one, that one. So has to be a smooth. So this is what makes a paragraph coherent. Okay, so it's well put together. No jumpiness of thoughts. Okay, so there are many ways to make paragraphs coherent. Okay, one of the important ways to make paragraphs make it smoother, so it flows better, is repetition. Repetition of words, of the same words. Repetition of the same words or phrases, or repetition of similar words or synonyms. So repetition is a great way of making the paragraph flow in a certain rhythm. So that's one very important way to create coherence in a paragraph. Okay, so here are two examples I have picked for you. This first example is from Dickens, the very famous first paragraph of Tale of Two Cities, the book Tale of Two Cities. It's one of the most famous paragraphs of all times. So this is an example of repetition of words or phrases to create a flow. Let me just read the paragraph first. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven, and we were all going direct the other way. So this is a very beautiful paragraph, and it demonstrates probably in a hyperbolic way, in an exaggerated way, in a beautiful repetition of words and phrases, so it allows the flow of the paragraph. Now, just let's look at the repetitions over here, okay? It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, okay? So that's, you can just see over there. It was the best of times, it was the worst of time. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was an epoch of belief, and it was epoch of incredulity. Incredulity is disbelief, bewilderment. It's like incredible incredulity. It was a season of light, and it was a season of darkness. It was a spring of hope, and it was a winter of despair. It's beautiful. Okay, now we had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. So this is an example of repetition of words, like over here, or phrases like we were all going to create a certain flow in the paragraph. Kind of just goes like this, and beautiful flow pair of one sentence to, or one phrase to another. In fact, this is one sentence, but it gives a beautiful example of repetition of words in creating coherence in a paragraph. Now, you don't have to repeat the exact words. You can also repeat synonyms, and this is the example that your book gives you. So repetition of similar words or synonyms to create coherence or flow. So, and sure enough, it was a dragon. So these people go on a discovery quest, they discover a dragon. And sure enough, it was a dragon. A great shining winged, scaly, clawy, big-mouthed dragon made of pure ice. It must have gone to sleep, curled around the hole where the warm steam used to come up from the middle of the earth, and then when the earth got colder and the column of the steam froze and was turned into North Pole, the dragon must have gotten frozen in his sleep, frozen too hard to move, and there he stayed. And though he was very terrible, he was very beautiful too. So now you might think that the author didn't think through this and just kind of wrote it in one flow of words of thought, but it's more than likely they actually thought about these sentence structures, etc., to at least in the revision part of the story to make it flow better. Now look at this, okay? Look how words are repeated here, and words are same words or similar words are used to keep the flow to keep your mindset in the same area as if you're there. And sure enough, it was a dragon, a great shining winged, scaly, clawy, big-mouthed dragon. See, so you're talking about dragon, and it's not that dragon is never mentioned in the rest of the paragraph. Okay, it is mentioned again because that way your thought kind of, if you didn't mention the dragon again, like dragon, and then later on after a while you forget who you're talking about. Okay, so dragon, repetition, made of pure ice. Now they're talking about like ice, cold. Okay, it gives you kind of, it's freezing. And sure enough, it was a dragon, a great shiny winged, scaly, clawy, big-mouthed dragon made of pure ice. Okay, it's a frozen dragon. It must have gone to sleep, curled up around the hole where the warm steam used to come from the middle of the earth, and when the earth got colder and the column of steam froze and turned into the North Pole, the dragon must have frozen in his sleep, frozen too hard to move, and there he stayed. And though he was very terrible, he was very beautiful too. Okay, so, and steam, and then there's froze. Okay, now you see this, there's a repetition of words here. Dragon is repeated, and steam is repeated, and pure ice and colder, frozen. These are synonyms of sensation of cold, right? So you can create this continuity of thought and a coherence in a paragraph by such repetition. Okay, now the word steam, for example, is again used. Okay, and when the earth got colder and the column of steam froze, okay, and the warm steam used. So this kind of keeps the reader engaged and allows the reader to go from one thought to another thought because they know that you're talking about the same subject. So one very important way to create coherence in a paragraph is repetition of the same words or similar words or synonyms. So we're talking about creating coherence in passages or in paragraphs, and that is a logical flow of thought or smooth transitions between one sentence to another sentence to another sentence, like this. So we talked about using repetition of words to create such coherence. The second way of creating coherence is uses of using pronouns, and I'd like to give you an example of this. So here's a great example of usage of pronouns in creating coherence or flow of a paragraph. This is from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Study in Sherlock Holmes story. So here's Watson is describing, Dr. Watson is describing his good friend Holmes. Holmes was certainly not a difficult man to live with. He was quiet in his ways, and his habits were regular. It was rare for him to be up after 10 at night, and he had invariably breakfasted and gone out before I rose in the morning. Sometimes he spent his day at the chemistry laboratory, sometimes in the dissecting rooms, and occasionally long walks which appeared to take him into the lowest portions of the city. Nothing could exceed his energy when the working fit was upon him. But now and again a reaction would seize him, and for days on end he would lie upon the sofa in sitting room, hardly uttering a word or moving a muscle from morning to night. On these occasions I have noticed such a dreamy, vacant expression in his eyes that I might have suspected him of being addicted to use of some narcotic, and not the temperance and cleanliness of his whole life forbidden such a notion. Had not the temperance and cleanliness of his whole life forbidden such a notion. So he's describing Holmes. Look at the number of pronouns that he uses. The first time he mentions Holmes, he of course uses the word Holmes. So the proper noun is mentioned. After that, it's all pronouns. Holmes was certainly not a difficult man to live with. He was quiet in his ways, and his habits were regular. It was rare for him to be up after 10, and he had inverted breakfasted and gone out of before I rose in the morning. Sometimes he spent his day. Now, these are important. As simple as they are, this leads to this paragraph, and this leads to this this sentence, and this leads to this, and there's a logical flow, and then you know that you're still talking about the same person. So using pronouns is a very important way to create coherence in a paragraph. Okay. A third way of creating coherence in the paragraph is by using coordinating conjunctions. Coordinating conjunctions. These are the fanboys, if you recall. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. So using coordinating conjunctions is another way of creating coherence in the paragraph, and the same quote will give us another example for us here. So the same quote here will give us another example of that. So nothing could exceed his energy when the working fit was upon him, but now and again a reaction would seize him, and for days he would lie upon the sofa in the sitting room. Okay, so using of these coordinating conjunctions allow the thought to flow. Nothing would exceed his energy except for this and this. Okay, so coordinating conjunctions like this are an important way to create a coherence in a paragraph. Okay, and finally, a very broad category is transition words. So transition words or phrases, and these are gems. You know, if I remember in college, I used to just like have a card of all transition words that I could use, and kind of like this, you know. And then when I would write an essay, after I written an essay, I would try to put in as many of these transition words in the essay as I could, and until then you begin to use them more selectively, and then they sound more proper, etc. But transition words are words that allow smooth transition from one sentence to another sentence. They typically go either in the beginning or at the end of sentences, etc., or somewhere along the line. So transition words can be categorized in many different ways. Inshallah, we'll talk about just transition words and transitions in the future. But examples of these are conjunctive adverbs, for example. So you can write, so let's say a paragraph is going along, and then you say, however, see? However suggests a change in thought processes, but the thought process change is not abrupt. It says this is going on, but this is happening. Okay? So conjunctive adverbs, however, moreover, therefore, thus, similarly, finally, besides, instead, consequently. So these are some examples. And subordinating conjunctions, and if you recall, coordinating conjunctions versus subordinating conjunctions, coordinating conjunctions to two independent clauses, and subordinating conjunctions, a independent and a dependent clause. Nevertheless, so subordinating conjunctions such as after, because, until, unless, when, while. So what I would suggest you to do is to just have like a note card, where you write out all these transition words. You collect and write out take good notes from the textbook and write out the transition words, and look back to these from time to time. And when you're writing essays, to see how you can possibly use these in your essays until they become natural to you. And there are other words such as, for example, of course, etc., that serve also as transitions. Now, transitions can also be like time-based. Okay, so for example, first this happened, then this happened, right? After that, this is what happened, and meanwhile, this was what was happening, and finally, this is what happened. Okay, so transition words can take you in. Basically, they help you transition in time, so the story that you're telling is smooth. Transition words can also be like cause and effect, right? So cause and effect. For example, because of this, as a result of this, etc. Okay. Transition words can also be in order of importance. Order of importance. Okay. For example, this I say first, second. We do this a lot, right? Third and finally, right? That's another example of transition words. Okay. And so these are some transition words. I would really encourage you to go through this unit and make yourself some cards of transition words, so you can go over them and use them as you write essays, and that will I believe you find very, very useful. So what did we talk about today? We talked about creating coherence in paragraph and in passages. We talked about how repetition of words or phrases can be used to create coherence, and along with synonyms. We talked about how using pronouns creates coherence in the paragraph. We talked about coordinating conjunctions of fanboys to smooth transition of thoughts. We talked about transitions, and transitions is a very broad category, and which we'll talk about again, and very, very, very useful. As I said, finally again, make a list of these and keep this throughout very close to your hand as you're writing the paragraphs, and help you in this course. Until next time, assalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. Assalamu alaikum.